Giants 27, Eagles 10.
Ooh.
Eagles fall to 11-6.
Crisis.
Number 5 seed going to the Bucs.
Absolute crisis mode right now. I can't think of too many teams that are going into the playoffs in this level of chaos and catastrophe. I mean, their defense has been a disaster for a while. Their offense matched them in this game. They played the starters because they actually had something to play for. The division was on the line. Seeding was on the line. And with everything to play for, they were getting wrecked by the Giants and bailed on it before halftime. Like, okay, Dallas was winning. So if Dallas beat Washington, the division, everything they were playing for was essentially gone anyway. But theoretically, they still had something to play for in this game, and we're doing such a bad job of it, and it was becoming so costly that before halftime, they pulled the starters. Now, at this point, A.J. Brown had been hurt. He got hurt on like a routine slant, and Nick McLeod forces a fumble, like gets beaten on the slant and then stays with it, comes in with the sort of tomahawk chop on the ball, forces the fumble, gets the ball out, and hurts A.J. Brown in the process. So they've lost Brown in the game. Jalen Hurts wrecks his finger. I've never seen a man so composed at the fact that his finger is mangled and clearly not the way a finger is supposed to be. He just kind of looks at it and is like, has this like slightly annoyed and frustrated look on his face, but like that was it. Like disappointed that his body has let him down in such a pathetic way.
He's very upset.
Yeah. But then they just like popped it back and sent him back out there. So eventually they pull all the starters. Jalen Hurts goes out. Brown's already out. They pull Kelsey and Lane Johnson, I think, from the offensive line. But this was all before halftime. That was how bad they had been wrecked by the Giants, who, remember, a couple of weeks ago with the team, they're like, well, even if they beat the Giants by 20, it's not going to mean anything.
It was a tough balance because they assumed the Cowboys were going to beat the Commanders, which obviously happened. Spoiler alert, we haven't gotten to that game yet. But yeah, I mean, I think the big concern is this Eagles defense, man. It's the offense. I don't, how hurt is A.J. Brown? Is he going to be back next week?
I don't know yet.
That's a big one, obviously. I have fewer concerns about the Eagles offense, even though I thought for much of the season they had issues. The number of times there is a receiver running through the middle of this Eagles defense with no Eagle in sight is unbelievable. It is bad, man. It is a bad defense right now. Explosive plays that they're giving up, the big plays that they're giving up in the passing game the last 6 or 7 weeks of the season. So this is going to be a great test of, I would say, like the underlying metrics versus the trend line. But the underlying metrics for the Eagles aren't necessarily great either. You know, they were sitting there at 10-1 at one point with all sorts of one-score losses. I think if they hadn't been in the Super Bowl last year and such a good team, we would have squinted and said, this is last year's Vikings team. I actually saw some people reference that. If we were as hard on last year's Vikings team that kept sneaking out one-score wins, the Eagles had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 one-loss wins, one-score wins out of their first 10 wins. And since that point, they've lost 5 out of 6. Like the whole thing completely regressed. And if they didn't have that baseline of, hey, last year they were the most well-rounded team in the NFL, they lose to Kansas City in a tough one in the Super Bowl. If we didn't have that first, we would have said, these guys are kind of frauds at 10-1, right? And now they look more like the 2020 Steelers that were 11-0 and then fell off the map because they should have, than they do like the defending Super Bowl champs that knew how to win, right? Because it's easy when they're Super Bowl runner-up, NFC champs who know how to win. Of course, that's why they're 10-1. They make all the comebacks. They find a way to win. Well, they stopped finding a way to win, and they stopped, playing defense over the last month and a half of the season.
They did. I mean, they are in absolute free fall at the moment. This is crisis time. They've already made a change in coaching on the defensive side. Remember, they basically gave it over to Matt Patricia.
They might need a search committee for someone to call plays
in the next week.
Yeah, or to play linebacker.
That too.
So, yeah, it's going to be an interesting one of, I think the Eagles, like this season, have the Eagles been a better team than the Bucs? Yeah, I think so. But you have two teams trending in complete opposite directions, right? The Bucs were 2-7 at one point, and the Eagles are 1-5 in their last 6 games.
Yeah. And
So-
getting worse.
So trending and momentum, or whatever you want to call it, going into the playoffs, it's all going to get tested when Eagles play the Bucs.
We need to give a shout out to Cam Brown with one of the best special teams plays I've seen in a long time. Coming through is going to run into the punter, but in such a way that it was like it would have been a weak as hell call. So he's like, no, I refuse to allow this to happen. I am going to grab the punter and hold him up and prevent him from falling over. And the punter was going for it.
It made for one of the funniest.
He was trying to fall.
Videos.
Like, he was trying to hit the deck. And this guy was like, no, not happening. And he's like literally holding him up to prevent him hitting the turf. Eventually keeps his balance, holds him up, doesn't let him hit the ground. And the official sort of behind it is like, yeah, all right, cool. No harm, no foul. And lets it play on.
It was a great play.
Good work, Cam Brown.
I did watch that special teams play, for the record.